Have you ever prayed for something so hard, and when it didn't come the way you wanted, you felt almost betrayed, like God owed you an explanation? Sis, I need you to sit with that question for a second, because there's a quiet trap so many faith-filled women fall into, and it doesn't look like sin, it looks like faith, it sounds like faith, it even quotes scripture, but underneath it, something else is running the show. It's entitlement wearing the clothes of faith. And today, I want to walk you through 7 signs that you might be standing in that trap right now. Not to shame you, but to set you free. Because I've been there. I've prayed prayers that were really demands. I've called it believing God, when really, I was just angry that life didn't bend to my timeline. I've sat in church pews with my hands raised, while secretly keeping score with heaven, tallying up every act of obedience, like receipts I plan to cash in one day. And it took me years to understand the difference between trusting God and trying to control Him with spiritual language. So stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to see your own life so much more clearly. And you're going to walk away with a real, practical way to shift from entitlement back into true, surrendered faith. Let's talk about sign number 1. Sign 1. You treat God like a vending machine. This is the big one. This is where entitlement almost always starts. You pray, you fast, you go to church, you read your Bible for 30 days straight. And somewhere in your heart, a quiet belief forms, I did my part, so now God owes me His part. You gave the tithe, so the promotion should come. You forgave him, so he should come back different. You stayed faithful, so the husband should show up on schedule. You've been good, so life should reward you. And when it doesn't happen the way you scripted it, something inside you feels cheated, like you kept your end of a deal and God didn't keep His. Sis, this is not faith. This is a transaction. And God never signed up to be a vending machine where you insert righteousness and life spits out blessings on command. Real faith says, God, I trust you even if it doesn't come the way I planned. Entitlement says, God, I did my part, so you better do yours. On my terms, on my timeline. There's a story in the Bible about 3 men thrown into a fiery furnace because they refused to bow to a king's idol. Right before they were thrown in, they said something remarkable. They said God was able to save them, but even if He didn't, they still wouldn't bow. Think about that level of surrender. They didn't say, God will definitely rescue us because we've been faithful. They said, even if He doesn't, we're still His. Read that again. Even if He doesn't. That's the posture of real faith. Not, God will do this because I earned it, but God is still good, still worthy, still mine, even if the answer is no, or not yet. I think about the women I've coached over the years who prayed for a marriage to be restored, poured years into it, did all the right spiritual things, and it still ended. Some of them walked away bitter, convinced God failed them. Others walked away wounded but whole, saying, I don't understand it, but I still trust Him. The circumstances were almost identical. The posture of the heart was completely different. Ask yourself honestly this week, when God doesn't move on your timeline, do you feel disappointed, or do you feel entitled to be angry? There's a difference. Disappointment is human. Entitlement whispers, this is unfair, you owe me. Sign 2. You confuse waiting on God with refusing to grow. Here's a hard truth, and I say this with so much love. Sometimes we use waiting on God as a spiritual-sounding excuse to stay comfortable and avoid the work we don't want to do. You say you're waiting on the husband, but you haven't dealt with the anxious attachment that makes you chase men who ignore you and dismiss the ones who actually pursue you well. You say you're waiting on the business breakthrough, but you haven't learned how to manage the money you already have, or built the skill that would actually make the business succeed. You say you're waiting on healing, but you keep going back to the same wound, refusing therapy, refusing to have the hard conversation, refusing to actually change anything about how you show up. Entitlement says, God should just fix it for me, without me having to do the uncomfortable inner work. But faith? Faith cooperates with God. Faith says, God, show me what I need to release, what I need to learn, what I need to heal, because I know you're not just trying to change my circumstances, you're trying to change me. There's a woman in the Bible who bled for 12 years. 12 years of doctors, of shame, of being considered unclean, of being pushed to the margins of her own community. And when she finally heard that a healer was passing through, she didn't just sit in her house and wait for a miracle to fall through her roof. She pushed through a crowd that didn't want her there. She reached out her hand despite the risk of being recognized and shamed. She did something. Her faith had feet on it. It moved toward the very thing that could heal her, even when moving was terrifying. If you've been waiting on God for the same breakthrough for years and nothing in you has changed, not your habits, not your mindset, not your patterns, not the way you handle conflict or money or your own emotions, that's worth examining honestly. Sometimes the wait isn't God being slow. Sometimes the wait is God waiting on you. Sign 3. You feel bitter toward women whose prayers got answered before yours. Let's go somewhere tender for a moment, because I know this one might sting. Has this ever happened to you? Your friend gets engaged, or pregnant, or the job you also applied for, or the house you'd been dreaming about buying, and instead of pure joy, there's this tight, uncomfortable feeling in your chest that you're almost embarrassed to admit. You smile on the outside, you type the congratulations message with the right emojis, but on the inside, a quiet voice says, "Why her? I've been praying longer. I've been more faithful. Why does she get it first?" Sis, that feeling isn't jealousy alone. It's entitlement. It's the belief that faithfulness should be rewarded on a scoreboard, in order, on a predictable schedule, and if someone else wins before you, something is unfair about the whole system. But God is not running a competition, and He's not scoring faithfulness on a leaderboard visible to the rest of us. Your timeline was never meant to look like hers. Comparing your unanswered prayer to someone else's answered one is like comparing chapter 3 of your book to chapter 20 of hers, and wondering why yours isn't finished yet. You're not behind. You're in a different chapter of a completely different story. The remedy here is not pretending you don't feel it. Pretending never heals anything. The remedy is naming it honestly before God. God, I feel jealous, and I don't want to feel this way. I don't like who this makes me. Help me trust that my story is still being written, and her breakthrough is not my delay. Real faith can celebrate someone else's answered prayer without secretly feeling robbed. And when you practice that celebration even while your own heart aches, something shifts in you. You start to trust that God's goodness toward her doesn't subtract from His goodness toward you. Sign 4. You get offended when correction comes. This one is subtle, but it shows up everywhere, in almost every relationship you have. Someone lovingly points out a pattern in you. Maybe you're too controlling. Maybe you speak harshly when you're hurt. Maybe you keep choosing emotionally unavailable men and calling it just my luck. And instead of receiving it, you get defensive. Your chest tightens. You feel attacked. You start building a case in your mind for why you're actually fine, why they don't understand you, why they're the real problem here, not you. Entitlement says, I don't need correction. I'm already walking with God. I'm already doing enough. But Scripture actually tells us that the ability to receive correction is one of the clearest markers of wisdom, not weakness. The woman who gets defensive every time truth is spoken to her is not protecting her faith. She's protecting her ego, and calling it discernment. I want you to notice this the next time it happens. When someone says something that stings, instead of immediately defending yourself or explaining yourself, pause and ask, is there a seed of truth in this? Even if it was said clumsily, even if I don't like how it was delivered. That one habit alone will mature you faster than almost anything else you could do this year. Faith is teachable. Entitlement is defensive. Sign 5. You believe God should bless the relationship, even though you know it's wrong for you. This one is painful, so I'm going to be gentle but honest, because I know somebody watching this needs to hear it today. You already know, deep down, that He's not walking with God the way you need Him to. You already know the relationship pulls you further from your purpose, not closer to it. You already know there are red flags you've been explaining away for months, maybe years. The inconsistency, the disrespect, the way he treats you differently in public than in private, the way your peace disappears the moment he walks into the room. But instead of releasing it, you pray for God to bless it. You pray for God to change him. You pray for God to make this thing work. The thing your own spirit already told you wasn't right. The thing your closest friends have gently tried to warn you about. Sis, that's not faith. That's asking God to bless your disobedience so you don't have to feel the pain of letting go, so you don't have to start over, so you don't have to sit in the discomfort of being alone for a season. Real faith says, God, if this isn't your best for me, give me the courage to release it, even though it hurts more than almost anything I've ever felt. Entitlement says, God, make this broken thing work, because I don't want to start over. I don't want to be alone. I don't want to feel the loss of what I hoped this would become. I know that's hard to hear, but some of you have been praying for years for God to bless something he never told you to have in the first place. And the peace you're looking for isn't on the other side of him blessing it. It's on the other side of you finally letting it go. Sign 6. You expect financial breakthrough without financial discipline. Let's talk about money for a second, because faith touches every part of life, including your bank account, your spending habits, and the way you steward what's already in your hand. You pray for financial breakthrough, but you're still impulse spending to soothe your emotions every time you have a hard day. You pray for abundance, but you have no budget, no plan, no boundaries with your money, no honest look at where it actually goes each month. You believe God should suddenly multiply what you have, while you're not being a faithful steward of what's already sitting in your account right now. There's a principle here that's easy to miss. God tends to bless and multiply what we manage well, not what we mismanage and simply hope he fixes without our involvement. Faith says, God, teach me to be wise with what I have, and I trust you to multiply it in your timing, in your way. Entitlement says, God, just give me more, so I can keep doing exactly what I've always done. This week, I want you to do one practical thing. Look honestly at your spending for the last 30 days. Not to shame yourself, not to spiral into guilt, but to see the truth clearly, maybe for the first time. Faithfulness with the small, unglamorous things is often the very thing standing between you and the breakthrough you've been praying for. Sign 7. You think your pain gives you a pass to stay bitter, unkind, or closed off. This is the deepest one, so let's slow down here, because this one touches identity, not just behavior. You've been hurt. Maybe by a man, maybe by the church, by people who should have protected you and didn't. Maybe by a parent, a friend, a betrayal you never saw coming and never fully recovered from. And because the pain was real, undeniably real, you've quietly given yourself permission to stay hardened, to be short with people, to assume the worst about everyone's intentions before they've even shown you who they are, to keep your heart in a locked room and call it protecting your peace, when really it's just protecting yourself from ever being that vulnerable again. Sis, your pain is valid. Nobody is telling you to minimize what happened to you, or to rush your healing, or to pretend it didn't cost you something real. But entitlement whispers, because I was hurt, I get to stay this way forever. I don't have to keep growing in love. I've earned the right to be bitter, closed, guarded, cold. Faith says something different. Faith says, God, I was wounded, and it's real, but I don't want the wound to become my entire identity. Heal me so I don't become someone who hurts others the way I was hurt, so the cycle stops with me, instead of continuing through me. This is one of the hardest, most beautiful shifts a woman can make. Choosing to remain soft after your heart has been broken is not weakness. It is one of the strongest, most spiritual things you will ever do, because it would be so much easier to stay hard. So let's recap, sis, because I want this to actually change something real in you, not just inform you for the next 5 minutes and then be forgotten by tomorrow. Entitlement says God owes you because you did your part. Faith trusts him even when the answer is no. Entitlement waits without growing. Faith cooperates with God's process, even when it's uncomfortable. Entitlement resents other women's blessings. Faith celebrates while trusting your own unique timeline. Entitlement rejects correction and gets defensive. Faith receives it with humility and looks for the seed of truth. Entitlement asks God to bless what you already know is wrong. Faith has the courage to release it, even through tears. Entitlement wants breakthrough without discipline. Faith manages well what it already has, in the small and unseen places. Entitlement uses pain as an excuse to harden. Faith uses pain as a doorway to grow softer and wiser instead. None of this is about condemnation, and I want you to hear that clearly before we close. If you saw yourself in even 2 or 3 of these signs, that is not a reason to feel ashamed. It's a reason to feel hopeful, because awareness is the very first step toward real, lasting transformation. You cannot heal what you refuse to see, and you just saw it, maybe for the first time in a long time. Here is your challenge for this week. Choose just one of these 7 signs, the one that stung the most, the one your spirit reacted to the moment I said it, and take one honest step in the opposite direction. If it was bitterness toward another woman's blessing, send her a genuine message of congratulations today, not a delayed one. If it was defensiveness, receive the next piece of feedback someone gives you without arguing back, even if it's clumsy. If it was the relationship you know isn't right, have one honest conversation with yourself, in the quiet, about what you already know to be true. You don't have to fix everything this week. You don't even have to fix everything this year. You just have to take one honest step and let God meet you there. God is not looking for a woman who has it all together, who never struggles with entitlement, who never questions him. He is looking for a woman who is willing to be honest, willing to grow, willing to trade entitlement for real, surrendered faith, one small decision at a time. And sis, if you're watching this, that willingness is already in you. That's why you're here right now, listening to this instead of scrolling past it. If this spoke to you, I'd love for you to stay close. Subscribe, so you don't miss the next conversation, because we are just getting started on this journey of becoming the woman God created you to be, and I don't want you to miss what's coming next. I'll see you in the next one.